All right, Scott, thank you so much. Today is post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD day, a day to help us sort of understand the condition that impacts millions of Americans, many of whom are suffering even more right now because of both the pandemic and the protest. We have Dr. Eudene Harry, a former ER doctor, medical lifestyle expert, joining us now to talk more about some of this that's going on. Good morning, Dr. Harry.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Tell me this. A lot of us, I think, are experiencing some things during these chaotic times right now, might not even realize it. What can we do to sort of pay attention to our bodies?
Well, you said it. We need to pay attention to our bodies. If we're feeling overly anxious and overly overwhelmed, things that we need to pay attention to is that, do we feel like we are coping with a sense of loss of safety? Do we feel that sense of helplessness? Do we feel that we are living in a little bit of fear? And it would be fair because right now we've had the pandemic, we've had the protests, we have so many things going on that our systems are really becoming overwhelmed. They're living in that fight or flight stage, and that ultimately can lead to some sort of psychological trauma.
Yeah, what do we do? I know a lot of people are calling it repetitive trauma. We keep seeing some of these videos over and over again.
Yes.
We see some of the police protests sort of get out of hand, and it's that chronic exposure. What kind of problems could that lead to later?
Oh, later that can lead to long-term problems with anxiety, depression, even chronic illnesses that we don't think about, such as high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, and what you mentioned at the beginning, post-traumatic stress disorder. Prolonged stress and that heightened sense of psychological trauma can lead to all of those things.
Dr. Harry, how real is this? A lot of people are saying, I want to raise my voice. I'm going outside and joining these protests. They already have a little bit of anxiety and anticipation because of, the health concerns going on, or maybe their own encounters with police, or seeing protesters who are sort of agitating and aggravating their current state of mind. And they sort of feel helpless and don't know what to do.
Okay, so here's some things that you start doing. Number one, if you're starting to feel really agitated and overwhelmed, take a break from the events around you. And that might be a media break. That might be turning on the television, your social media. It might mean just kind of not getting involved in all of those things for a brief period of time. That could be daily. That could be once a week. It depends on each of us individually. The other thing I want to say here is so important to focus on the things that you can do. There's so many things that are out of our control right now. And if we tend to focus on those things, we are always going to end up feeling hopeless and helpless. So if we start focusing on the things that we can do, like if you're out protesting, for example, the things that you can do is make sure that you're wearing a mask and you have your hand sanitizers and you're doing the things that keep you safe. The other thing that you might want to think about is, and I say this together and it reminds me of the movie, but it's basically eat, sleep, pray, and exercise.
Yeah.
And those things are so important. And you have to eat well and you have to exercise because it does help you to manage your stress levels. If you don't eat well and you don't exercise, then you're going to, at the end of this, not be in any position to be able to do something.
Let me ask you, this is my last question for you. I know from the protests moving to the pandemic, we're hearing about some cases spiking again, the possibility of that second wave. And I know you just talked about that, wearing your mask, having your hand sanitizer. As a former ER doctor, are you concerned?
I am concerned because I think the protesters, I mean, of course, they feel connected to this cause. And that's one of the ways that they feel less helpless and they're taking action and they're doing something. The other thing that I want to say to you is also think of yourself and others as well, because you're there protesting for the lives and the well-being of other people. Start with your life and your well-being and your family's life as well. So think of all of those things when you're going out, and be very cautious and really follow the CDC guidelines, because we know that following these guidelines does reduce our risk of not only contracting disease, but passing it on to other people.
Dr. Eudene Harry, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All right, 7:52 this morning. Are you hopping a flight anytime soon? American Airlines announcing a big change despite being in the middle of the pandemic. What you need to know before you pack your bags and board that plane.